21st of January 1968, 0342 hours, Indochina time, Kaisan Combat Base, Quang Tri Province. The radar altimeter beeps twice per second as two A-6A intruders drop through 200 feet above ground level in total darkness. Monsoon rain hammers the canopy so hard the pilot cannot see his wingtip. The bombardier navigator in the right seat watches two green cathode ray tubes that show terrain, target, and release point with no reference to the world outside. Every other strike aircraft in Southeast Asia sits grounded tonight. F-4 Phantoms need 3,000-foot ceilings. A-4 Skyhawks require daylight. B-52s fly above weather, but cannot see individual foxholes. The A-6 does not care. Its digital integrated attack navigation equipment, Diane, turns clouds into irrelevance and night into advantage. At 200 feet, the bombardier navigator presses the commit switch. 18,000 pounds of high explosive and napalm fall on a paven trench line that American Marines cannot see and cannot reach. No one in Hanoi believes weather has stopped protecting them. But for 3 years, every monsoon night has belonged to the A-6. The beep-beep of the radar altimeter is the sound of America owning the weather. The conventional wisdom in 1965 holds that precision bombing requires clear skies. Tactical air doctrine since World War II assumes fighters need visual identification before weapons release. The Rolling Thunder air campaign against North Vietnam proves the rule every monsoon season. From May through September, rain and low clouds shut down 60% of strike sorties over route packages 4V and C Quam. Planners at 7th Air Force and Commander Task Force 77 reschedule missions and wait for breaks in the weather. The North Vietnamese Army learns the pattern within 6 months. Truck convoys on the Ho Chi Minh Trail move only at night and during storms. Supply depots near Hanoi and Hai Phong operate openly under cloud cover. American intelligence estimates that weather-related cancellations give PAVN logistics a 4-to-1 advantage during summer months. Weather owns half the war, until it does not. The A-6 intruder rewrites every assumption about what all-weather means. The Grumman A-6 intruder is not a fighter. It is a medium attack bomber built around two systems that no other tactical jet in the American inventory possesses in 1965. First, the Digital Integrated Attack Navigation Equipment, Diane. Diane combines two radars, an inertial navigation system, a ballistics computer, and a moving map display into a single network that allows a two-man crew to navigate an attack without reference to the outside world. The ANA PQ-92 search radar sits in the nose and paints terrain returns in a 120-degree arc. The ANA PQ-112 track radar locks onto point targets, bridges, buildings, road junctions, and feeds range and bearing into the bombing computer. The bombardier navigator in the right seat controls both radars from a console with two cathode ray displays. He can see rivers, ridgelines, and radar-significant structures through clouds, rain, and darkness. The inertial navigation system updates position every second with drift rates under 1 nautical mile per hour. The ballistics computer calculates release points for 28 different store configurations. No other aircraft in theater integrates navigation and attack this way. The F-4 Phantom has a radar designed for air-to-air intercepts that cannot track ground targets with useful precision. The A-4 Skyhawk flies day visual attacks only. The F-105 Thunderchief uses radar ranging but requires the pilot to visually acquire the target before release. The A-6 does not. The bombardier navigator picks the target on radar, the computer calculates the solution, and the system releases automatically. The pilot never sees the target. He does not need to. Second, the crew concept. Every other Navy and Marine Corps attack jet is single seat. The pilot navigates, identifies targets, evades defenses, and delivers weapons alone. The A-6 splits the workload. The pilot flies the aircraft and executes defensive maneuvers. The bombardier navigator runs the radars, updates navigation, selects targets, and manages weapons release. Two men share 18 hours of mission planning before every sortie. The crew becomes a single decision-making entity. Diane gives the A-6 the ability to navigate and attack in zero visibility conditions. The two-man crew gives it the capacity to do both simultaneously under combat stress. Together, they break the weather monopoly. The aircraft carries 18,000 pounds of ordnance on 5 external hardpoints. Combat radius from Yankee Station, the carrier operating area in the Gulf of Tonkin, reaches 600 nautical miles with a typical load. That range covers every target in North Vietnam and the Lao Panhandle. The standard attack profile is 300 knots at 200 feet above ground level. At that altitude, the aircraft stays below most radar horizons and inside the reaction time of visual anti-aircraft gunners. The radar altimeter beeps twice per second. When the jet descends below 250 feet, that beeping tone becomes the signature sound of A-6 operations. Pilots hear it every time they drop into the weeds. It means the aircraft is committed. It means the target has seconds to live. The first A-6A models arrive in Southeast Asia in March of 1965, with VA-75 aboard USS Independence. Within 6 months, the squadron demonstrates all-weather capability on night strikes against coastal targets en route package Tata 2. By 1966, 8 Navy squadrons and 2 Marine Corps squadrons operate in theater. Mission tasking evolves rapidly. Planners discover that the A-6 can hit targets other aircraft cannot reach, not because those targets are distant, but because weather and darkness make them inaccessible to visual attack platforms. The A-6 becomes the default solution for monsoon strikes and all-night interdiction. Weather that grounds the rest of the air wing becomes the A-6's mission trigger. 15th of November, 1966, 02:15 hours Indochina time, 30 kilometers west of the Lao-Vietnamese border in Savannakhet Province. A VA-65 A-6A climbs off USS Constellation and turns toward the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The target is a truck park identified by signals intelligence 4 hours earlier. Cloud cover sits at 800 feet. Visibility is 0. No moon. Forward air controllers working the trail see nothing tonight. AC-47 gunships and illumination flares are useless in this weather. The A-6 crew does not need them. The pilot levels at 18,000 feet, and the bombardier navigator begins a radar search along the planned track. The AN/APQ-92 search radar shows the Mekong River as a black line against gray terrain returns. The BN updates the inertial navigation system with a river offset fix. Drift correction, 0.3 nautical miles. The aircraft is exactly where it thinks it is. At 30 kilometers from the target, the BN switches to the track radar. The radar lock tone sounds in both headsets. The track radar has found the truck park. Metal vehicles under trees show as bright returns against darker vegetation. The pilot begins a descent to 6,000 feet. Airspeed, 360 knots. The BN selects all 28 Mk-82 500-pound bombs on the multiple ejector racks. Total ordnance, 14,000 pounds. The radar altimeter begins its double beep as the aircraft drops below the clouds at 1,000 feet. The pilot levels at 500 feet and accelerates to 420 knots. The BN keeps his eyes on the radar display. Green crosshairs drift toward the target return. At 8,000 meters, the bombing computer lights the release cue. The BN presses the commit button. The A-6's belly opens. 28 bombs fall in a string 400 meters long. The pilot pulls into a climbing left turn, and the BN twists in his seat to watch the radar return. The target bloom, the white flash of explosions, fills the track radar scope. Then the scope goes blank. The truck park no longer exists as a radar significant return. Total time over target, 90 seconds. Total external visibility, 0. Post-strike reconnaissance 2 days later counts 19 destroyed trucks and a fuel dump that burned for 11 hours. No other aircraft in theater can execute this mission tonight. The A-6 does it 3 times per week. We owned the night because we didn't need to see the target. The Ho Chi Minh Trail carries 60 tons of supplies south per day in 1966. By 1968, that figure reaches 200 tons per day during the dry season. Monsoon months reduce the flow, but do not stop it. Pavan. Logistics planners assume that weather and darkness provide immunity from air attack on 2/3 of nights. They are correct for every aircraft except the A-6. The Navy assigns night trail interdiction missions to A-6 squadrons exclusively after December of 1966. Marine A-6 units flying from Jian'an focus on the Northern Trail network in the demilitarized zone. The mission profile becomes standardized: single aircraft strikes, radar navigation to the target area, radar identification of vehicles or storage sites, low-altitude bombing runs at 500 feet or below, immediate egress, no visual confirmation. The radar tells the crew everything they need to know. PAVN anti-aircraft defenses along the trail adapt slowly. Radar-guided 37mm and 57mm guns cannot track targets below 1,000 feet in mountainous terrain. Optically aimed guns cannot engage aircraft they cannot see or hear until after weapons release. The A-6's low-altitude approach at 420 knots gives gunners less than 7 seconds from detection to overflight. Most PAVN gun crews never fire a shot. Loss rates for night trail strikes remain below 2% throughout 1966 and 1967. That figure is 1/4 the daytime loss rate for F-105 missions against the same target set. The difference is visibility, or rather, the lack of it. The A-6 turns weather and darkness from obstacles into advantages. American intelligence intercepts in early 1967 record complaints from trail logistics commanders about ghost bombers that strike without warning in conditions previously considered safe. The PAVN 559th Transportation Group shifts more traffic to daytime and clear nights, where F-4 and F-105 strikes are predictable. This makes the convoys visible. Daytime strike aircraft destroy 30% more trucks in the first quarter of 1967 compared to late 1966. The A-6 does not win the trail war alone, but it forces the enemy into the kill zone of other weapons. By making night and weather unusable, the A-6 removes half of PAVN's operational freedom. The truck drivers who once moved freely under monsoon clouds now bunch up on clear nights. F-4 Phantoms, with visual bombs and 20mm guns, shred them, not by flying more sorties, but by flying the sorties no one else can. 21st of January, 1968, 0330 hours Indochina time. Kaisan Combat Base, Quang Tri Province. The PAVN 304th Division begins its assault on the western perimeter. Mortars and rockets hit the ammunition dump. Secondary explosions light the cloud base 800 feet above the runway. Ground visibility, 100 meters in rain and smoke. Ceiling, 400 feet. The 26th Marine Regiment defending Kaisan calls for immediate close air support. Marine tactical air control radios every available strike aircraft. No F-4s can get below the weather. A-4 Skyhawks cannot see the target through rain and smoke. Forward air controllers orbiting at 4,000 feet see nothing but cloud tops. One aircraft type responds. A-6 VMA AW242 launches 2 intruders from Jianang Air Base at 0340 hours. Flight time to Kaisan, 22 minutes. The lead crew contacts the tactical air controller on frequency 255.4 MHz. The controller reads coordinates for a PAVN trench line 300 meters west of the perimeter wire. No mark, no visual reference, just coordinates. The A-6 pilot acknowledges and begins descent. At 2,000 feet, the aircraft enters solid clouds. At 800 feet, the pilot breaks into clear air, a narrow gap between cloud base and ground. Visibility in the gap. 200 meters. The BN has already locked the track radar on the trench line using offset coordinates from the Kaisan runway. The pilot flies the attack heading while the BN monitors the radar crosshairs. Airspeed, 300 knots. Altitude, 200 feet above ground level. The radar altimeter beeps twice per second. The BN selects 18 Mk-82 bombs. The bombing computer lights the release cue. The bombs fall. The pilot pulls up into the clouds without seeing the target or the impact. The tactical air controller watches the strike from his orbit. We put 18 bombs on a trench we never saw, in weather that grounded everyone else because the radar told us exactly where it was. The Marines on the ground report direct hits. PAVN assault momentum stops for 90 minutes. The second A-6 strikes a mortar position 500 meters northwest of the perimeter at 0425 hours. Same weather, same procedure, same result. Between the 21st of January and the 8th of April, 1968, the duration of the siege, A-6 intruders fly over 600 sorties in support of Kaisan. Of those sorties, more than 400 occur in weather conditions that prevent operations by all other fixed-wing attack aircraft. The Marines at Kaisan receive close air support 24 hours per day, regardless of visibility or ceiling. This is unprecedented. No other besieged position in Vietnam enjoys continuous all-weather air support. The A-6 makes it routine. Mission profiles vary. High-altitude radar strikes against artillery positions in the surrounding hills. Low-altitude runs against trench lines and bunker complexes. Night interdiction of supply routes feeding PAVN forces around the base. Every mission uses Diane for navigation and attack. Visual identification occurs only when weather permits. About 35% of sorties. The remaining 65% rely entirely on radar. Accuracy remains consistent across both profiles. Post-strike bomb damage assessment via aerial photography on clear days shows circular error probable figures of 50 meters for radar-only strikes. That is the same. accuracy as visual dive bombing by F-4s. The weather makes no difference to hit probability. PAVN forces around Khesan do not adapt quickly enough. Their doctrine assumes that low clouds and rain provide protection from air attack. Every other American aircraft respects that assumption. The A-6 ignores it. PAVN infantry learn to dig deeper when they hear jet engines overhead in bad weather. Communist radio intercepts in February of 1968 include multiple references to all-weather bombers that strike during conditions previously considered safe. PAVN casualty reports from units around Khesan cite airstrikes as the primary cause of losses, even during monsoon weather. This inverts the normal pattern. In most sectors of South Vietnam, monsoon months reduce airstrike casualties by 40 to 60%. At Khesan, the reduction is less than 10%. The A-6 closes the weather gap. American ground commanders notice requests for A-6 close air support increased threefold between January and March of 1968 across our core tactical zone. Marine air-ground task forces begin planning operations with the assumption that A-6 support will be available regardless of weather. Commanders no longer delay attacks because of forecast rain. They know the A-6 will fly. The PAVN knows it too. While other aircraft waited for clear skies, the A-6 made monsoon irrelevant. 9th of May, 1972, 0900 hours Indochina time, USS Coral Sea, operating in the Gulf of Tonkin, 90 nautical miles southeast of Haiphong. 6 A-6A intruders from VA-52 taxi to the catapults. Each aircraft carries 4 Mk-52 naval mines on wing pylons and fuselage stations. Total mine load per aircraft, 8,000 pounds. Mission code name, Pocket Money. Objective, close Haiphong Harbor to seaborne traffic supplying North Vietnam. This is the most politically sensitive strike mission of the war. President Richard Nixon personally authorized the mining operation 48 hours earlier. Soviet and Chinese merchant ships currently sit at anchor in Haiphong Harbor. The mines must be laid with sufficient precision to blockade the channel without hitting neutral vessels. The margin for error is 200 meters. Weather over the target, overcast at 1,200 feet, visibility 3 miles, light rain. Not ideal but workable for the A-6. At 0859 hours, the lead aircraft launches from Catapult 3. The remaining 5 intruders follow at 30-second intervals. The formation climbs to 15,000 feet and flies northwest. Escort, 4 F-4J Phantoms from VF-51. Jamming support, 3 EA-6A intruders with electronic countermeasures pods. The package crosses the coast at 0936 hours near the mouth of the Red River. No MiGs appear. North Vietnamese early warning radars track the formation, but SA-2 missile sites do not engage. At 0945 hours, the A-6s descend to 6,000 feet and turn toward Haiphong Harbor. The lead BN locks the track radar on the main shipping channel. The channel appears on radar as a dark gap between lighter returns from the harbor breakwaters. Navigation accuracy is critical. The mines must land in the channel, not in the anchorage where Soviet ships sit. Each A-6 carries a unique set of mine arming coordinates programmed into the Mk-52 fuse. The mines activate 72 hours after water entry. That delay allows foreign ships to leave before the blockade begins. The lead aircraft rolls into the first mining run at 0948 hours. Airspeed 300 knots. Altitude 500 feet. The BN releases all 4 mines in a single pass. The mines fall nose down and hit the water in a line 150 meters long. Each mine sinks to the bottom and begins its activation timer. The second A-6 drops its mines 400 meters northeast of the first spread. The third aircraft mines the secondary channel near the naval base. All 6 aircraft complete their runs within 8 minutes. Total mines laid, 24. The formation climbs to 15,000 feet and egresses east. Total time over the target area, 12 minutes. No losses, no battle damage. 1 SA-2 launch after the last aircraft clears the harbor. The missile detonates harmlessly at 8,000 feet. The mining had to be precise, had to be done in weather, and had to be done without hitting foreign ships. Only the A-6 could do all 3. The mines activate on the 11th of May at 1800 hours Indochina time. Haiphong Harbor closes. 16 Soviet merchant ships and 4 Chinese vessels remain trapped inside. Moscow protests but does not intervene militarily. Seaborne traffic into North Vietnam drops from 4,000 tons per day to 0 within 72 hours. The port does not reopen until January of 1973 after the Paris Peace Accords. The mining operation succeeds because of A-6 precision. Other aircraft could carry the mines, but none could deliver them with the required accuracy in marginal weather. The Mk-52 mine weighs 2,000 pounds and must land within 200 meters of the intended point to create an effective barrier. F-4 Phantoms, using visual dive bombing, achieve circular error probable figures of 100 meters under ideal conditions. In 1,200-foot ceilings and 3-mile visibility, those figures double. The A-6 radar bombing achieves 50-meter accuracy regardless of weather. That precision makes the difference between a successful blockade and a political disaster. The blockade effect is immediate and cumulative. North Vietnam imports 85% of its war material through Haiphong in early 1972. The harbor closure forces reliance on rail traffic from China. By June of 1972, fuel stocks in North Vietnam drop 40%, artillery ammunition availability decreases 30%. The Pavan Spring Offensive, the Easter Offensive, stalls in Quang Tri Province, partially due to supply shortages. The A-6 mining operation does not end the offensive alone, but it removes the logistical foundation that sustains it. Haiphong stays closed because 24 mines land in the right place. Those mines land in the right place because 6 A-6 crews put them there with radar. While diplomats debated risks, the A-6 made the decision executable. 18th of December, 1972, 1945 hours Indochina time, 20 kilometers northwest of Hanoi, 2 A-6A intruders from VA-196 descend through solid clouds toward the Yen Vien Railroad Marshalling Yard. Linebacker 2, the Christmas bombing campaign, is in its first night. B-52 Stratofortresses hit area targets across Hanoi and Haiphong. F-4 Phantoms strike airfields and petroleum storage. The A-6 draws a different mission. Precision night strikes against small targets that require radar accuracy. Yen Vien is the primary rail hub feeding supplies south from China. The yard covers 600 meters by 400 meters and includes repair shops, locomotive sheds, and storage warehouses. American intelligence identifies 3 critical choke points: the main locomotive repair building, the switching control tower, and the ammunition storage bunker. All 3 targets fit inside a 200-meter circle. B-52s cannot hit them without destroying the entire yard. F-4s need daylight and visual conditions for this level of precision. The A-6 does not. Weather tonight: overcast at 800 feet, rain, 0 moon illumination. The lead aircraft levels at 18,000 feet, and the BN begins radar search. The AN/APQ-92 shows Hanoi as a cluster of bright returns 30 kilometers southeast. The Red River appears as a dark line curving through the city. Yen Vien sits northeast of the river bend, a rectangular collection of buildings and rail tracks visible on radar as geometric returns. The BN locks the track radar on the locomotive repair building. The building is large enough, 80 meters by 40 meters, to provide a solid radar return. The ballistics computer calculates a 30-degree dive angle from 8,000 feet. Ordnance load: 12 Mk-83 1,000-pound bombs with radar-fused proximity detonators. The pilot rolls into the dive at 1952 hours. Airspeed increases to 480 knots. At 4,000 feet, the clouds swallow the aircraft. The pilot flies instruments. The BN watches the radar. At 1,200 feet, the A-6 breaks into clear air below the cloud deck. Ground visibility: 400 meters in rain. The BN keeps his eyes on the radar display. The target is still 8,000 meters ahead and invisible to the naked eye. Anti-aircraft fire lights the clouds above. 85mm and 100mm guns fire blindly into the overcast. Dozens of 37mm automatic cannons pump tracers into the sky. None of the fire is radar-directed. The North Vietnamese gunners cannot track the A-6 through clouds. At 800 feet, the radar altimeter begins its double beep. The pilot levels at 500 feet and accelerates to 520 knots. The BN presses commit. 12 bombs release in a 0.8-second train. The pilot pulls into a hard-climbing right turn, and the BN twists to watch the radar return. The bombs detonate in a line across the locomotive building. The radar image whites out. Secondary explosions follow. The target return disappears from the scope. The second A-6 strikes the switching control tower 90 seconds later using the same radar offset from the river bend. 6 Mk-83 bombs. Direct hit. Both aircraft climb back to 18,000 feet and egress southeast toward the coast. Total time in the Hanoi Air Defense Zone: 11 minutes. No battle damage, no losses. The gunners couldn't see us, couldn't hear us until after release, and couldn't predict where we'd roll in because we navigated by radar through the clouds. Linebacker 2 lasts 11 nights, the 18th through the 29th of December, 1972. B-52s fly 729 sorties and drop 15,000 tons of bombs. Navy and Air Force tactical aircraft fly 1,000 additional sorties. The A-6 flies 86 sorties during Linebacker 2. That is 8% of the tactical strike total. But A-6s hit 90% of the precision targets assigned to Navy aircraft. The target set includes rail yards, command bunkers, radio transmitters, and SAM storage sites. All require accuracy inside 100 meters. All are struck at night in weather that prevents visual bombing. Loss rate for A-6 sorties, 2.3%, 3 aircraft lost. The A-6 operates in the most heavily defended airspace in the world and loses fewer aircraft per sortie than expected. Part of that survival rate comes from speed and maneuverability, part comes from electronic countermeasures, but much of it comes from weather. The A-6 uses clouds as cover. North Vietnamese gunners cannot engage targets they cannot see. The A-6 exploits this. It flies through weather that blinds defenders and uses radar to attack with precision those defenders cannot match. By the 29th of December, 1972, Hanoi's rail network is paralyzed. Yen Vien marshalling yard remains inoperable until February of 1973. Electricity production in the capital drops 75%. Petroleum storage capacity decreases 60%. The North Vietnamese government returns to peace negotiations in Paris on the 8th of January 1973. While B-52s destroyed area targets, the A-6 killed the nodes. 3 wars hide inside the Vietnam War. The first is a daylight war fought by fast movers under clear skies. The second is a political war fought in Washington and Paris. The third is the weather war, the fight for control of the night and the monsoon. Most aircraft surrender that war to nature. The A-6 wins it. The beep-beep of the radar altimeter marks every victory. 200 feet above the ground, blind in clouds, guided only by green phosphor screens. This is where the A-6 lives. This is where it kills. Weather stops being the enemy's ally, it becomes ours. The A-6 Intruder flies 35,000 combat sorties in Southeast Asia between 1965 and 1973. That figure represents 4% of total American fixed-wing strike sorties during the war. 4%. Yet the aircraft accounts for a disproportionate share of strategic effect. The reason is mission availability. The A-6 flies when nothing else can. Weather data from 7th Air Force and Commander Task Force 77 show that visual attack aircraft scrub or reschedule 40% of planned sorties due to clouds, rain, or darkness. The A-6 scrub rate is 6%. That gap, 34 percentage points, translates into operational tempo that cannot be matched by larger aircraft inventories. MACV planners discover this in 1967. They begin allocating high-value targets to A-6 squadrons with the explicit assumption that weather will not delay the mission. This changes strategic planning. Commanders no longer build operational timelines around weather forecasts, they build them around A-6 availability. The shift is subtle but consequential. In I-Corps Tactical Zone, the Marines plan the 1968 Da Krong Valley sweep with the knowledge that A-6 close air support will be available regardless of monsoon conditions. The operation proceeds on schedule in May, the wettest month. F-4 squadrons fly 40% of planned sorties due to weather. A-6 squadrons fly 92%. The ground offensive succeeds in part because air support never stops. PAVIN forces cannot use weather to regroup or resupply. They are under continuous attack. The psychological effect is cumulative. Communist after-action reports from the Da Krong fighting mention constant bombing and no safe time even during heavy rain. This is new. In every previous operation, PAVIN units gained respite during monsoon. Not anymore. The A-6 removes that respite. The same pattern repeats across the theater. At Khe Sanh, the siege ends in part because PAVIN logistics cannot sustain casualties under all-weather air attack. On the Ho Chi Minh Trail, truck losses increase 25% after A-6 night interdiction becomes routine. Around Hanoi and Hai Phong, target sets that were previously weather-protected become vulnerable 365 days per year. The strategic implication is simple. America gains 120 additional strike days per year in areas that matter most. Those 120 days do not add sorties, they add options. Commanders can execute time-sensitive missions without waiting for weather windows. Intelligence can task strikes against fleeting targets, truck convoys, supply caches, troop concentrations that appear and disappear in hours. The A-6 makes exploitation immediate. This collapses the sensor-to-shooter timeline. In 1965, the average time from target identification to strike is 72 hours for fixed targets and 12 hours for mobile targets. By 1968, those figures dropped to 24 hours and 4 hours respectively for targets assigned to A-6 squadrons. The compression is tactical. The effect is strategic. PAVIN logistics planners lose the ability to predict safe movement windows. They cannot rely on weather forecasts to time convoys or resupply missions. American aircraft appear regardless of conditions. This forces dispersion. Pavilion units spread supplies across more caches. They move smaller loads more frequently. They build deeper bunkers and more concealed storage. All of these measures reduce efficiency. A truck that once carried 5 tons now carries 3 because the load is split across multiple trips. A supply cache that once held 200 tons now holds 50 because concentration invites air attack even in bad weather. The cumulative inefficiency is immense. Rand Corporation analysis in 1970 estimates that PAVN logistics costs increase 40% between 1965 and 1969 due to defensive adaptations against all-weather air attack. Most of that increase comes from dispersion and redundancy. The A-6 causes the problem, not by dropping more bombs than other aircraft, but by dropping bombs when other aircraft cannot. The cost to North Vietnam is not measured in destroyed trucks. It is measured in wasted capacity. The extra trucks, extra fuel, extra time, extra manpower required to move the same tonnage south under constant threat. The Easter Offensive in 1972 demonstrates the constraint. PAVN masses 200,000 troops and 600 tanks for a conventional invasion across the DMZ and into the Central Highlands. Logistics for the offensive require 1,500 tons of supplies per day, triple the normal flow. The supply effort begins in January of 1972. By March, the effort falls behind schedule. American interdiction accounts for part of the delay, but weather accounts for none of it. A-6 strikes continue through monsoon and darkness. The trail never closes. PAVN planners expected weather to provide sanctuary during February and March, the wettest months. They received no sanctuary. The offensive launches in late March, 3 weeks late. That delay allows RVN forces to reinforce threatened sectors and allows American air power to shift resources north. The offensive stalls in Quang Tri and fails in Kon Tum, partially because logistics cannot sustain the initial momentum. The A-6 does not stop the offensive alone, but it prevents the logistical surge that would have made the offensive unstoppable. The American bombers that flew in the rain, we could not predict them, could not avoid them. They took away the weather. The political implications are harder to quantify, but no less real. The decision to mine Hai Phong Harbor in May of 1972 depends on precision delivery under pressure. President Nixon approves the operation because he believes the mines will land where intended without hitting neutral ships. He believes this because the A-6 has demonstrated that precision in weather for 7 years. The mining succeeds, the blockade holds, Hai Phong stays closed until the Paris Accords. None of this happens if the mines miss. The A-6 does not miss. The same precision applies to Linebacker 2 in December of 1972. The decision to bomb Hanoi during Christmas carries enormous political risk. Civilian casualties or collateral damage could fracture domestic support and international alliances. The targeting plan mitigates risk by assigning precision strikes against small military targets to the A-6. Those strikes succeed. Rail yards, transmitters, and command bunkers are destroyed with minimal collateral damage. Post-war assessments by the Defense Intelligence Agency estimate civilian casualties in Hanoi during Linebacker 2 at 1,300 to 1,600 deaths. That figure is tragic, but far below the 10,000 to 15,000 deaths predicted by anti-war activists before the bombing. The difference is precision. The A-6 provides that precision in conditions that would force other aircraft to use area weapons or cancel missions. By making weather irrelevant, the A-6 makes political decisions executable. Commanders and presidents can choose to act without waiting for ideal conditions. That optionality is strategic power. It expands decision space. It compresses enemy response time. It forces adversaries to defend everything all the time because nothing is safe behind weather. The A-6 does not win the Vietnam War. The war is not won, but the A-6 changes the terms of the war in ways that ripple through logistics, operations, and strategy. It takes a weapon, weather, away from the enemy and makes it neutral. In some cases, it makes weather an American advantage because the A-6 thrives in conditions that ground everything else. This is rare. Most weapons expand capability within existing constraints. The A-6 removes a constraint. It deletes bad weather from the operational calculus. Planners stop asking, can we strike in this weather? They start asking, which A-6 squadron is available? The psychological shift is profound. Weather stops being an excuse. It stops being a delay. It stops being a sanctuary. The Vietnamese communists feel the change acutely. PAVN documents captured in 1972 include explicit instructions to avoid movement during rain and darkness. The instructions acknowledge that previous assumptions, weather provides cover, are obsolete. American all-weather aircraft nullify weather. The crews who fly the trail at night hear the radar altimeter beeping twice per second. and know exactly which aircraft the enemy fears. The same beep-beep echoes over Quezon at 200 feet in monsoon rain, while Marines on the ground hear bombs impacting trenches they cannot see. It echoes over Haiphong Harbor as 24 mines drop into a shipping channel with 50-meter precision. It echoes over Hanoi as Yen Vien marshalling yard disappears from a radar screen in a bloom of white light. The tone is prosaic, a simple audio cue that tells the crew they are low, but it marks the moment when weather stops mattering. It marks the instant when the enemy loses the weather. Bad weather wins wars. The A-6 has made the weather ours. The war ends. The A-6 does not. The aircraft remains in service with the Navy and Marine Corps until 1997. 32 years after its first combat sortie in Vietnam, it flies in every American conflict during that span: Lebanon in 1983, Libya in 1986, the Persian Gulf in 1991, Bosnia in 1995. Every mission validates the same principle. Weather does not determine when or where you strike if your aircraft does not need to see the target. The A-6 proves the principle 35,000 times in Southeast Asia. The lesson is not lost on American air power planners. The F-111 Aardvark, an Air Force strike aircraft with terrain-following radar and all-weather capability, enters service in 1967, partially in response to A-6 success. The F-15E Strike Eagle incorporates synthetic aperture radar and night vision targeting pods in the 1980s. The FA-18EF Super Hornet, the aircraft that replaces the A-6 in Navy service, includes advanced radar modes for ground attack in all weather. Every modern American strike aircraft is an all-weather aircraft. That expectation, that air power operates 24 hours per day regardless of conditions, begins with the A-6. The jet itself is retired because newer aircraft incorporate its capabilities with better performance, greater range, and multi-role flexibility. But the mission set does not retire, it becomes baseline. The idea that weather can ground an air campaign becomes obsolete. Adversaries understand this. No modern military plans defenses around weather protection. No logistics network assumes that clouds provide sanctuary. The A-6 killed those assumptions in the jungles of Southeast Asia between 1965 and 1973. The crews who flew the jet did not always understand the strategic implications of their missions. They understood the beeping tone of the radar altimeter at 200 feet. They understood the green glow of the radar scope, showing a target they would never see with their eyes. They understood the trust required to release 18,000 pounds of ordnance based on crosshairs on a screen. That trust built the reputation. The reputation built the mission set. The mission set changed the war, not enough to win it, but enough to remove weather as a North Vietnamese weapon. Enough to make monsoon irrelevant, enough to turn night into a hunting ground. The crews who did that work flew 35,000 sorties. They lost 84 aircraft. They brought radar-guided precision to a war that assumed bombing required eyeballs on target. They proved the assumption wrong every night. They proved it in weather that grounded everyone else. They proved it with 2 radars, 1 inertial navigation system, and 2 men who trusted the green screens more than their eyes. The A-6 intruder did not end the Vietnam War, but it ended the weather war. And that mattered more than most people realize. Weather is a weapon until someone builds a machine that ignores it. The A-6's intruder is that machine. 2 radars, 2 men, and a bombing computer turn monsoon rain and moonless night from obstacles into advantages. Every other aircraft in Vietnam waits for clear skies. The A-6 makes clear skies irrelevant. It flies when nothing else can, hits what nothing else will reach, and gives commanders the one thing weather always steals: options. Bad weather wins wars. The A-6 made the weather ours. 35,000 times that beeping tone marked the moment when weather stopped mattering.